100 years over here. Now we're really concentrating on about maybe 8 to 10 rabbis that were, let's say, connected with regards to history, with regards to Sephardic studies, and someone that was, let's just say, a famous name, especially in Bulgaria, was someone named Rabbi Avraham Asa. Very famous rabbi. He happened to be born, I believe, in January the 16th in the year 1886. He passed away on June the 17th in the year 1951. I believe Bet Tammuz marks his Hilul. Now, he was a famous Bulgarian Jewish public figure. He was also a rabbi. He was an educator, a newspaper editor. He also was a manager of a printing house and was one of the leaders, let's just say, of Bulgarian Jewry and part of the Zionistic movement, especially in Bulgaria and later on in Israel. So we're going to learn about how he will actually help with in regards to chronicling Jewish history. But let's explore a few of the highlights of, let's say, the rabbi's life. Now, he was born in an area called Plovdiv, I believe, in the year 1886. That, if I'm not mistaken, is in Bulgaria. This specific area is, I think, right around the Sofia area, this specific vicinity, a place we've spoken about in this series on various occasions before over here. So he would start learning at a young age already. He would I believe he would be associated or would be learning inside the Alliance school system, or Kol Yisrael Chaverim, as we can say also. I think afterwards, come out the year 1899, he would be moved on to the Beit HaMidrash L'Rabbanim Istanbul. So I'm not too sure much within regards to that, but he would then starts his rabbinic studies. I think there was a man of the name Rabbi Avraham Danon over there who was, if I'm not mistaken, very much had a part of this rabbinic seminary, let's just say, itself. I think he was a famous philosopher, and once again in the journalist industry, itself, Avraham Danon was, we should point out also. Okay, so he would learn under, I think, partly under his auspices over there, and I think he would eventually, let's say, receive, let's say, inside there he would learn Ivrit. Remember, at that point in time, Zionism was, let's say, thriving, so language was very important for many people. And he would then learn, I think, various other, let's say, within regards to writings of Rashi, for example, over there. That would be one of the things that he would concentrate. And various other types of writings, let's just say. He was, I think, in the grammar industry, within regards to, he was able to write in solitario. I think that was another thing. He would receive an ordination to rabbinate, and then I think he would be sent, let's say, for more various different trainings. I think in the Bucharest seminary over there in Bucharest at that point in time had a famous Jewish community. I think he would learn under Rav Meir Moritz Beck, if I'm not mistaken. He would have been headed, I think we mentioned him before, if I'm not mistaken. He himself passed away in 1923. He was a rabbi. He was part of the Beit Knesset Hakor Ali Shel Bucharest, I think, for more than 40 years. He was a famous Romanian rabbi, let's just say, and much has been said within regards to him on various, maybe we've spoken about him before. So it's always interesting to hear. I think he was once again also very aligned with the Zionistic movement and doing a huge amount of Zionistic activity. So he'll be trained over there, and then I think it's actually interesting. I believe he was Sephardi, if I'm not mistaken, but he would also learn within regards to the liturgy of the Ashkenaz, let's say, pronunciations or davening in of itself. Now, I think come 1904, he would return to Bulgaria over there, and he would then receive various different roles. I think he would serve as a Hebrew teacher in elementary school there, and I think he would be part of the Jewish community and educating in Varna, I believe, which is a port city, I think, in the on northeast of Bulgarian capital of Sofia. He would get married to Rabbinit Katia over there, from the Shaman family, who I believe came to Bulgaria, if I'm not mistaken, from Moscow with her family at one stage in time. And I think he would become attached, let's just say, to the Zionistic group called the Chovevei Tzion, which I think this organization of Zionism would have various different names. They would promote Jewish immigration and settlement of the land of Israel. I think she herself happened to be related to other, let's say, people that were quite well known, including Karl Jacob Herbst, who was a journalist and once again one of the founders of the Zionistic movement in Bulgaria, and the Boris Schatz. He also happened to be, I think, as well as a painter, a founder of the Betzalel, the School of Arts and Crafts in Jerusalem. I don't know much about it. And he was also the founder of the Betzalel House of the Disabled, if I'm not mistaken. and would have a connection with an Israeli museum. Now, I think later on he would move to the area of Yambol. This will be his next port of call. I think it's province quite near Sofia. He would teach in a community school over there. And later on in 1908, they would move to Sofia over there. And I think over there they would teach in the Alliance school system over there. And he would also start writing articles with regards to a Zionistic weekly publication called the Hamishpat. I think that happened to have been edited by a man with the name Chaim Aaron Farhi, who was a chairman of the Jewish consistory of Bulgaria and the Jewish community in Sofia, respectively, and had a member of Sofia City Council, so he was a prominent person there. During it was time period of World War I, so he was drafted in the Bulgarian army, and he would be appointed a general over there and a military rabbi of the First Army. Now, somewhat shortly afterwards, I think there was, after the victory, let's say, there was a campaign against Serbia and the occupation of Skopje. And Rabbi Asa would act as chief rabbi of the Jews of Skopje. Very interesting enough. So he was, and he was also the community's Dayan. I think this was based in North Macedonia, respectively. And he would start his duties. He would have close relationships with, let's say, Metropolitan over there and Neophyte of Vidin. And I think he would. There was various important things. I think, come on, late 1917, his wife and 4 of the children joined him to Skopje. And his wife would teach, I think, also in the Jewish school. Now, much was going on with regards to Macedonia and Bulgaria at that stage in time. So I think he would, it's reported he would hide Bulgarian soldiers and officers. Many of them were Jewish people in his house, and would smuggle them out of the city. It's reported over in civilian clothes. And his family would eventually, I think in 1919, at the start of it, leave Skopje, and with consent of government and representative, and would eventually return to Bulgaria. He would return and be appointed director of 2 Hebrew schools over there. One was called, I think it was actually in the neighborhood called Yochbonar. I hope I pronounced it correctly. This was, I think, a very highly populated Jewish area over there. And his wife, Rabbinit Kati, would be appointed his deputy. They would teach in schools, and there was a huge shortage of school teachers, I think, at that point in time. He, in 1920, was appointed director of the education department of the Jewish consistory, which I believe was headed by a man of the name Chaim Aaron Farhi, who we mentioned about just beforehand, who was the leader of the community. He would restore the Jewish education system there after the war of the many years of war. He would appoint someone named Yaakov Meir Levi, who was an Israeli educator, translator, a historian, from, let's just say, to become a supervisor in schools, bring employment of teachers, kindergarten teachers who would come from Israel, from the Eretz Israel. They would write textbooks in Hebrew, open seminars for teachers in kindergartens, as well as kindergarten classes, and the Hebrew would become the main language over there. Come on, in the year 1920, he would be sent as one of the representatives of Bulgarian Jewry to a London conference. This has been mentioned about on various occasions before. It was a Zionistic conference held in London in 1920. Many representatives would be there. Among them included a man of the name Albert Romano, who was a famous writer, a publicist, a historian in Bulgaria. Also Yeshua Kalev, another person. He happened to be a politician and a journalist. Once again, one of the heads of the Zionistic movement. And Chaim Aaron Farhi, who I mentioned about, this is the 3rd time already inside this video. Now, it's interesting. Avraham Asa's son Dov was one of the founders of the Hashomer Hatzar branch in, let's just say, Bulgaria. It was Zionistic youth movement over there, which was founded in the year 1913, and was the head of its national leadership until he would, I think, immigrate later on in the late 1920s. He would serve alongside national leadership. Now, in 1922, Rabbi Asa would open now a printing house in Sofia, and one of the things that he would publish was writings of the famous Shlomo Abraham Rosanis, man we've spoken about before. He was one of the most famous, let's say, historians of Spanish Jewry, without a doubt. In recent generations, he was a researcher, especially of the history of the Jews of Ottoman Empire and the Balkans. So also he would publish the books of Shaul Mizan, also who was Zionistic, let's say, activist and one of the leaders, let's say. He was a poet, a writer, and a doctor also, respectively. So he would publish their works over there. There was a Hamishpat printing house, published a Jewish weekly called the Hashofar, which was connected to Albert Romano, let's just say, over there. And I think later stage, I think come up the mid-1920s, he resigned from the Jewish consistory and was later elected to the Sofia City Council. There was unfortunately a lot of anti-Semitism at that point in time in Bulgaria, so he would try, within regards to combating it. Now, I think later on he would move with his wife and children to Eretz Israel, and I think originally in 1932 he would arrive there for a study visit, and he would immigrate a year later. He settled in the Montefiore neighborhood, I think, and later in the Craftsman Center in Tel Aviv. He would later on in 1935 be appointed a Sephardic Associate Secretary and 1936 he was appointed the Secretary of the Union of Bulgarian Immigrants, which I think was established the year before. And I think come April the 23rd, 1937, he became one of the founders of Kupat Aliyah Bank. 1944 would see him become one of the founders of the Banim Ligbulem. I think this was helping Sephardic and Mizrahi people in the Jewish community to settle the land of Israel, which is very important. And was one of the founders of the Klub Kadima, which was established by the Sephardic Jewish Federation, and was looking into social and cultural club of Sephardim, how they were able to, especially for the people of Greek descent. He was personally involved in the establishment of settlements, especially in Sur Moshe, which is interesting enough. It's a moshav quite near, I think, the city of Netanya, and also the Bet Halevi. This is more of a worker settlement in Emek Hefer, if I'm not mistaken, and the Tel Baruch neighborhood in Tel Aviv. This is the northeast of Tel Aviv, quite near Yarkon. During the Second World War, after Bulgaria joined Axis powers, the Bulgarian immigrants in Israel established the Central Committee, let's say, of handling immigration from Bulgaria, which will help people, let's just say, escape from Bulgaria. And he was appointed secretary and spokesman also. Like, he got married, as we said before, early on, I think 1904, to Rabbanit Katia, she came from the Shein family, and they had 5 children. They would all immigrate to Eretz Israel. Now, I think Avraham Asa would later on suffer from chronic kidney failure. I think much of his life. He would undergo a surgery in Vienna at one stage in time. I think in 1926, one of his kidneys was removed, it's reported, over. And one stage in time, who would live in the area of Ma'abarot, which was, as I said before, a kibbutz. In Emek Hefer, I think the air quality, let's just say, was possibly better over there. I mean, for his condition. He passed away in 1951 and was buried in local cemetery. His wife, I believe, passed away a few years later in 1954. So very interesting. He was a famous rabbi of his time, Rabbi Avraham Asa. Another, let's just say, famous Bulgarian who we've spoken about. I think we've spoken about various Bulgarian rabbis, maybe a dozen already. So it's always good to add to that list. So on that note, friends, please everyone subscribe to the channel. We're a community here. We're learning about the great rabbis of yesteryear. If you descend from any of the great, let's just say, famous people we're speaking about, please send me an email. I would love to hear more. If you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe now to the channel. We're near 7,000 subscribers. Wish you all Shavuot Tov. Take care and thanks.